evidence for that, because I wouldn't say such a defamatory thing without truth as a defense, now would I?
1 minute left on your time.
I can do it in 59 seconds.
Great.
One man named Richard Warman has filed every single complaint under this in the last 5 years. Holy cow, who's that thin-skinned guy? Oh, by the way, the Human Rights Commission is under investigation now by the RCMP for hacking into a private citizen's account because they go online and post bigoted remarks themselves under code names. And they hacked a woman named Nellie Hashmi's internet account to do so to cover their tracks. Oh, you know, one more thing about Richard Warman. He used to work for the Human Rights Commission as an investigator in the anti-hate crime session, and he files all their complaints. Remember that quote I read earlier? There's a reason it's called white nationalism, and why the founders of National Socialism excluded sexual deviants that are like a cancer to our movement. You know, I said that was written by Pogue Mahone. You know who the hell Pogue Mahone is? Pogue Mahone is Richard Warman, Ian Fine's former employee, the anti-hate investigator who has filed the majority of the anti-hate complaints under Section 13. Ian Fine's former employee and #1 customer under Section 13 and the Human Rights Act is this bigot who 2 years ago in this city confessed before the Human Rights Tribunal to writing, it's called white nationalism, and the founders of Nazism excluded sexual deviants that are like a cancer to our movement. His employee wrote that filth. That filth came from the Human Rights Commission. And these people would censor you or censor me because we run cartoons?
Well, thank you very much. The violence and evil it is born from spreading hatred demands our attention. Parliament has provided us with a mandate, and we will continue to apply the law as we are obliged to do. We believe that Section 13 is well-founded in law and jurisprudence. This does not discount the benefits of an honorable, responsible debate and a continuous examination of how our evolving society influences and manages these issues. The Commission acknowledges that human rights are not static. They evolve and change with changes in society and the law. A free and inclusive society must draw a line between free expression and hatred. They are not one and the same. Free expression is the foundation of a free, open, and inclusive society. Hatred is the poison that erodes the tolerance and open-mindedness that must flourish in a multicultural society committed to the idea of equality. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fine said anyone can file a complaint and they're all handled. It's not true. I'll give you 2 examples very specifically. I don't know if Mr. Fine knows this because he didn't know enough that he can't use the word nigger without being breaking his own law. But I don't even know how well he knows his file. He can answer. There was a complaint filed by someone named Andrew Gill against this Richard Warman, who used to be a staffer of Mr. Fine's, because this Richard Warman has written hundreds of bigoted posts, like the one I've got them here on my computer if you'd like to see them. So a citizen named Andrew Gill filed a complaint against Mr. Fine's own staffer named Richard Warman. Could you imagine? It would be like Mr. Fine being on the hook for saying the word nigger. What happened to the complaint? They refused to accept it because Mr. Gill rubbed Dean Stacey, another one of Mr. Fine's staffers, the wrong way. I have the memos here if anyone wants to see them. Because Mr. Gill was, his sister was thought to be a racist or known to police, they refused to go after Richard Warman. This March, when he was asked about that, Dean Stacey, who rejected the complaint, said it was faxed on double-sided paper. That was the excuse they used for not going after the bigot I just said. So to say that anyone can file a complaint is a lie. If you try and complain about the hundreds and hundreds of bigoted posts made by his staff, they'll ignore you. Just like if I tried to hold him to account for using the word nigger, they'd ignore me. They persecute their enemies. What about the Gill case?
I'm not going to speak to any specific case, but Mr. Levant, the legislation speaks for itself, and anyone in this room can read the legislation and see that people have a right to file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission.
But if
what happens with it, Mr. Levant, after it is filed, is a different question.
It goes to the garbage. Do you want to talk about the RCMP investigation?
Well, a lot of allegations have been made, a lot of suggestions are made about the work of our investigators. Mr. Levant speaks to I don't know if he used the word hacking, but I think he's referring to what has been reported as hacking into a private citizen's internet account, posting of hate messages on the internet, a number of allegations. Let me just speak to, first of all, the issue of hacking into a private citizen's internet account. There's very little I'm able to say, given that there is an ongoing, and I think most of you know this, an ongoing investigation by the Privacy Commissioner into this allegation. That said, there are three things that I would like to say. First of all, no one at the Commission hacked into any private citizen's internet account. Secondly, there is no evidence that anyone at the Commission hacked into a private citizen's internet account. And thirdly, at the end of the day, we are very confident that the Privacy Commission, and if the RCMP is going to be looking at this, the RCMP will find that we've done nothing wrong, and we certainly haven't hacked into any private citizen's internet account. On the issue of posting hate messages, at the very best, this is an allegation. That said, let me be very clear about something. Not for a millisecond would our Chief Commissioner, would our Deputy Chief Commissioner, or anyone else at the Commission tolerate or condone the posting of hate messages by anyone.
Can I read from page 752 of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, a hearing in this very city, where Richard Warman, his former employee, under oath, said the following. I mean, I've got the documents right here. You can bluff these people because they haven't been reading it. Mr. Warman, the bigot that I quoted, the one saying the anti-gay stuff, he was asked to read this bigoted post. Mr. Warman, that states, "Welcome, Pogue Mahone." And the reason for that is because that was one of the pseudonyms that I used to log on to Stormfront and in monitoring the website. Basically, I picked that title because it was the name of an Irish Celtic music band, blah, blah, blah. I've got it right here, folks. I mean, I have a PDF of the transcript. I mean, he's asking you not to believe your lying eyes, but to believe his excuses, because he's got a Privacy Commissioner investigation, he's got an ICMP investigation, and as to this hacking charge, I didn't make it up. A Bell Canada employee subpoenaed before the Human Rights Tribunal testified that the account was hacked. Nellie Hashmi was shocked to learn this. That's the evidence.
That is so untrue.
I have the transcript here.
Then you read the transcript to this audience, Mr. Levant, and you tell me, you read to me where the Bell witness said that the Canadian Human Rights Commission hacked into a private citizen's internet. You read it.
I'll go on all day.
Right now.
I'll read it right now. And I'd like to say that the transcript I'm about to read from, Mr. Fine did not want released to the public. In fact, Mr. Fine sent his lawyers to ban journalists from that March 25th hearing. It doesn't surprise me he tried to keep journalists out because this hacking came to light. He wouldn't have an RCMP investigation. He wouldn't have a Privacy Commissioner investigation if he managed to keep you guys out.
Is there a question here, Mr. Levant?
No, I just love batting down his lies because these folks don't know the facts. I got them here on my screen.
One more thing, if I might, Mr. Moderator. I think it's important. I would urge all of you, because there has been a lot of talk about the extent to which Section 13 operates and what is and what is not a reasonable limit on freedom of expression. I think it's important that you know what, in fact, at least in the federal sphere, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has actually done. And I would urge you to go to their site, to the website, and read, as you can, the 12, 14 decisions that have been rendered in the last several years, in which they do talk about what it does take and what is the actual hate that they're referring to. I think it's important to know and to be able to put in perspective what in fact has happened to date. And you can easily do that by going to the tribunal website and reading those decisions.
This wasn't a public issue until a few months ago. Why? Because first they went for the neo-Nazis, but I wasn't a neo-Nazi, so I didn't care. Then they went for the far right-wingers like Ezra Levant, but I wasn't far right-wing, so I didn't care. Then they went, I'm paraphrasing Father Niemöller from the Holocaust, you know, first they went for the Jews. So then they went for Maclean's, and they're sort of in the middle, right? So maybe I should care. And then they went for the Halifax Chronicle Herald, and they're almost liberal. Well, gee whiz, maybe they're coming for you next. It's time to care. We don't like those neo-Nazis. We don't like the bigots like the guy who used to work for Mr. Fine. So we don't speak up when they get ground into powder. But it's time for all of us to care. If you think that I'm so fringe that what happens to me won't happen to you, ask Paul about what's going on his newspaper. It's time to act, and you know what? I'm going to defy the Human Rights Commission. You know, just throw me in jail. Let's see how that does for public opinion on these censorship laws.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Let's get ready to rumble!